The patch is upon us! I decided to get a more edited video up with my thoughts about it so I can get to the main points more concisely and skip over the stuff I don't think is as important. The patch notes will be linked in the description if you're much more interested than I am about which bugs they fixed. Bear in mind that while the patch is live right now and there are a few things we can test and figure out, overall ideas about the game's balance are going to take some time. Everything you see in this video is my prediction, having not played the patch yet, working only from my prior knowledge of the game and the patch notes. So, as with all speculation, take it with a grain of salt. Okay, maybe more of an American French fries amount of salt. That's probably closer to what we're looking for. The question on every competitive player's mind when they found out a patch was coming was this: will this patch end the Crab Rave? Crab Tank, specifically on the Splash-O-Matic, a very powerful, versatile weapon in its own right, has been dominating the competitive metagame for Splatoon 3 to a degree not seen since the Tri-Slosher meta of very early Splatoon 2. And that happened and got patched out of existence before I even bought a Switch, so this is the most polarized I've ever seen a game in this franchise. Top-level teams are running 2 or even 3 Splash-O-Matics. Gambawumi is a Twitter user who reports on weapons they're seeing used in top-level Japanese play. Follow them on Twitter if you want to know these things. They recently posted about Area Cup Plus 81 that 85% of the comps played in top 8 had 2 Splash-O-Matics. Splash was one of only 4 weapons that were being picked by more than one team. Clearly there's been a balance problem. My prediction before this patch has been that I think Crab Tank needs to be nerfed in multiple ways for it to stop boxing other weapons out of competitive play. This will be a great opportunity to test that theory, because Crab Tank only received one nerf, and the Splash-O-Matic itself hasn't even been touched. It's easy to scoff at the Crab's duration being nerfed by just 1 second. It sounds like an insubstantial amount of time, and admittedly I don't think it's going to shift it very far from the meta. But that is 11% of its overall duration, and I think that's a fairly significant proportion of it to go away. I would still like to see a range nerf, making it so the Crab can't get such complete control over the narrow, choke point-prone maps of Splatoon 3. They could also do something like nerf its defensive capability, the way that it can just press ZL and avoid all damage for the most part. Maybe it's a little slower, or it takes damage more quickly, or the armor in general shreds faster. There are a lot of different ways that they can do it, and I don't really care exactly which way they do it. There are a lot of good ones that they could choose from, but I think it needs something else. One other change that makes me doubt that Crab is going away is that the sloshing machine got hit with a substantial nerf that will, I think, actually cause it to be chosen considerably less than before. Not only does it now only get Booyah Bomb at 220p, it also has a 10% ink consumption nerf to deal with, making it so that at a full tank, it can only fire 10 sloshes, only 4 after throwing a fizzy bomb. Sloshing Machine has been an oppressive pick in the past, but one positive for it was that it's a pretty good counter to the Splash-O-Matic, having Booyah Bomb to target Crab Tanks and mid-range zoning pressure to ward off sneaky aggression from the Splash's short-ranged main weapon. Another popular anti-crab weapon, the Custom Junior, got a less significant nerf of 10 points to special, which isn't that bad for a weapon that paints that well, but it's another piece of anti-crab tank armament that's been weakened. These nerfs leave me wondering what's left that can really stop Crab Tanks that doesn't bring major downsides with it. That said, the devs have made a really interesting choice here, opting to try and buff some other options that I have to think have been chosen specifically because they compete for the Splash-O-Matic's niche. Maybe the thought process here is to make other similar options to the Splash-O-Matic more enticing, so that it increases the diversity of the game, not by addressing Crab meta itself, but by giving people more options to play within Crab meta. The Splat Dualies, definitely the second most picked Crab Tank weapon at high level, received a points to special buff, making them faster now to get Crab than the Splash. The Splat Dualies also pair well with Tetra Dualies, which may benefit from a Reef Slider buff, improving invincibility frames at the end of a special that has up until this point been prohibitively unsafe to use in most situations. Several aggressive short-range shooters have received buffs, with the splatter shot getting a points to special buff, the 52 also getting a points to special buff, which for the 52 is kind of huge, given that it's one of the biggest weaknesses of the weapon right now, and the T-Tech getting a major buff to its special. The Tri-Strike buff feels like a huge one for me. You're going to have to stay further away from this special now, both because the radius of it has increased and because the damage it does has been drastically increased, so you spend less time in it before being splatted. Anyone who passed on a weapon because it has Tri-Strike might want to test the new version of the special out in games, because besides how exposed and vulnerable the special is, this buff addresses all the problems I had with it, and I think we're going to see a lot more teams experimenting with it as an answer to Crab Tank if they haven't already. T-Tech is up there on my list of weapons to evaluate for adding to my own weapon pool. They still haven't swapped its special out for Inkjet, but I'll take what I can get, I guess. Some other weapons you'll want to start reconsidering. Sloshing Machine getting taken down a peg by itself will already make more bucket players look at the V-Slosher, but the fact that its special also got this major buff makes me feel like we'll be seeing a lot more of it. I've been saying for some time that I think Nautilus is underexplored competitively, and now it got a 15% firing time buff that makes it a lot deadlier. Bear in mind, this is a weapon that, with top-level aim, can score a quad in one charge already, and has lightning-fast projectile speeds and a high fire rate. That much of an increase to its uptime seems terrifying, especially if they release a more aggressive kit in the future. Please give it Inkjet again. Tacticooler also received something of a buff in that it's no longer affected as much by Respawn Punisher or Haunt. While they will still make you respawn slower and lose more of your special for being splatted if you have the Tacticooler buff, they don't cancel out the Tacticooler buff anymore. My guess is that they now just work as if you were wearing enough gear to have that faster respawn and that much special saved, so it should be a pretty huge improvement in that very specific situation. This means that Tacticooler is a lot safer from the Respawn Punisher E-Leaders and Haunt Tetras that have been noteworthy but not quite as major players in the metagame lately. That said, Machine losing some of its glory may take away some of the Tetris niche, given that they've been run in the past specifically to run down machines, and E-Leaders have been pushed out by Crab Tanks, so I don't know if we'll see this have a major impact right now, but those weapons are around, and in a meta where they come to more prominence, this might have a delayed effect on the game then. One other major change to the game in this patch is a change to Ninja Squid, a gear ability that's been untouched except for one patch in Splatoon 1 and one patch in Splatoon 2. The devs are trying to side-grade the ability with one buff and one nerf. The nerf is intended to target Ninja Squid being used in close-quarters fights and worsen this advantage of the ability while maintaining its use for crossing larger expanses of the map to approach longer-ranged weapons unseen. Exactly half a second, 30 frames, after dropping into squid form, it says kid form in the patch notes, but if that were the case, we shouldn't see ripples after I've been standing up for this long, you won't get the Ninja Squid ripple-free swimming, and you'll cause splashes. After that half second, Ninja Squid kicks in and starts working as before. To compensate for this nerf, swim speed gear has become a better way to compensate for the reduced swim speed you get from Ninja Squid. While you will still swim 10% slower than usual with Ninja Squid no longer cuts the efficacy of 20% of your swim speed on top of that effect. So if you never ran swim speed up alongside Ninja Squid, this will make no difference for you. But using swim speed up gear should get you moving a lot faster with Ninja Squid than it used to. That half second of splashing does feel concerning for me, given how important Ninja Squid has been in combating E-Leaders so far in Splatoon 3, but I don't feel confident making a claim about whether it'll end up mattering in that use case in particular until I've played the patch more. A few other balance changes that probably won't have a huge impact on the metagame, but that might be interesting to some. Aerospray now paints better, which will, in all likelihood, change absolutely nothing, except for the gold Aerospray players' high scores for Booyah Bomb output. Splattershot Nova paints much better now, by 19%, almost 1/5. That's substantial and may give it a niche as a killer whale spam option if that special ends up being that desirable, but its combat capabilities are untouched, so I can't imagine it's going to be seeing top-level play anytime soon. Dynamo got a damage buff, which is sort of an indirect range buff. Dynamos don't like two-shotting anything, because one shot takes long enough, so even though its max range technically isn't affected, being able to one-shot someone from further away is basically a range buff. I don't know how substantial that range buff is, it's still not much better than Splash-O-Matic range, but that's at least a change in the right direction for a weapon that hasn't seen much competitive play at all so far. Big Swig Roller now does a minimum of 35 damage instead of a minimum of 30 damage with horizontal attacks, which, great, but like, what it actually needs is to one-shot with its horizontal and maybe also a better special. What's way more important is that Big Swig and other rollers can no longer cause slowdowns by attacking this wall on Eeltail Alley. Glad that's over with. Bamboo got a pretty substantial ink consumption buff, a 17% decrease. I don't know if that's something it really needed, and I don't think it's going to raise it up to any level where it's being considered heavily in competitive play again, but I'm sure the Bamboozler Propaganda Twitter account is heralding it as the Scepter of the Gods because of it, as they should. Jet Squelcher got an accuracy buff, specifically that the accuracy doesn't worsen as badly when firing repeatedly on the ground. Angle Shooter, now 3 shots instead of 4 shotting, and it paints enough that you might actually occasionally disrupt an enemy player's movement with it. That's a really significant improvement that probably still doesn't matter. I think it's still the weakest sub-weapon in the game. Splattershot Pro now has 180p crab, so while it's still not going to get crab that fast because, unlike Splash or Splat Dualies, it has significant ink consumption issues, at least now pro diehards have some copium to partake in as a distraction from the fact that their weapon has Angle Shooter. 96 Gal got a points to special buff, which maybe like 2 audience members cared about, but hey, those audience members are really bringing the excitement because it would feel awkward in that big of a room if they gave more lukewarm applause. And the Splatana Wiper got a points to special nerf for no discernible reason. That's all I saw fit to cover in the video. There's a whole section of bug fixes below these balance changes that I'm not going to cover, but you've got the link to the official patch notes in the description if you're a Umbrella player looking for some hope down there. Looking forward to seeing what the new metagame brings. See you in Splatsville.